Bill Nye, the science guy here. I'm going to explain the complicated logic behind carbon pricing. But first, safety glasses on. When something costs more, people buy less of it. Safety glasses off. That's it. Okay, safety glasses on. When we release carbon, say by burning coal or driving an SUV, all of us pay for that in the form of things like fires, floods, and crop failures. Putting a fee on carbon creates incentives to emit less carbon. And more importantly, it also incentivizes the development of low-carbon technology, which is huge because that's vital to reducing emissions globally. And because for some reason, John, you're a 42-year-old man who needs his attention, here's some Mentos and a bottle of Diet Coke. Now? Here, I've got an experiment for you. Safety glasses on. By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it?
My kids love that Mentos in the Coke trick. That was Bill Nye, of course, the science guy, losing his patience over America's attitude toward climate change. We're going to speak to him in just a moment. But first, I want to break down the situation we are in. Just this Saturday, sensors in Hawaii recorded new carbon dioxide levels. And you know how long it's been since it has been this bad? 3 million years. I'm going to say that again. 3 million years. Today, we are already seeing the consequences of this new era of global warming. First, there's rising temperatures. A recent NOAA report found that 2018 was the 4th warmest year ever recorded on planet Earth. 2016 was the warmest ever. We're also seeing rising sea levels due to accelerating melting of polar ice. NASA recently found a glacier on Antarctica's western coast has contributed to about 4% of the world's rising sea levels. There's also more frequent extreme weather. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration studied 14 catastrophic weather events in 2018. In the United States alone, that added up to a total of $1 billion with a B dollars in damages. Those events included Hurricanes Florence and Michael and the devastating wildfires out west. All of this creates a more dangerous world for humans and other species. Scientists recently said climate change was a major reason that 1 million animal and plant species are now threatened with extinction within decades.
All right, joining us now, Bill Nye, the science guy, science legend and host of the new podcast, Science Rules, coming out this Thursday. Bill, good to see you. I'm appreciative of what you did and how you did it, because we still have deniers amongst us. Now,
we certainly
David
do.
Wallace Wells, I just heard him about an hour ago on NPR. He's written The Uninhabitable Earth from New York Magazine, was saying that, look, he's a guy who always grew up understanding that the globe was warming, but he never was able to take it all that seriously. We just sort of thought it would fix itself, or people would fix it for us. Now we have Jay Inslee running for president entirely on the basis of dealing with climate change. Are we at a point where people who believe it are taking it seriously, and people who don't believe it are either being shunned or defeated in their ridiculous arguments?
Well, for us on the science side of this problem's been around 30 or 40 years. And so what I believe is happening is the voting cohort is coming of age. So in general, not universally, but in general, climate deniers are of a certain age. And those people are getting outnumbered by regular, normal people who embrace science. And the problem is really, it's global, and I guess the problem has always been it's in slow motion. This does not have the catastrophic effect of, say, Pearl Harbor or 9/11. This is much more gradual. However, the effects are more serious. And as we say, the Earth's going to be here. No matter what humans do, the Earth will be fine. It's just, can humans adapt to it quickly enough? And the guy that I saw the other day, if I may take a moment, was Congressman Thomas Massie from the 4th District of Kentucky. And he's an electrical engineer. He says on his website, he claims to be an inventor. And he he acted as though he cannot grasp this idea. He focused on the idea that 800,000 years ago there was a higher level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than there is today. And how do we know that? By looking at the ice cores, the bubbles of gas, or the ancient atmosphere trapped in the ancient ice. So, Mr. Massey, I presume you don't watch MSNBC here.
Well,
as you know,
hold on, Bill. Why do you presume that? Hello.
Why do I say that?
Yeah, you don't know. He might watch.
Well, he might. Well, a member of his staff might. That's what I'm hoping for. So, Congressman, or the Congressman's staff, here's the hockey stick graph that you guys love to go, oh, that's been debunked. No, it hasn't been debunked.
Right.
This is a fact. So, Congressman, if you're out there, and if you're really an electrical engineer, here's the problem. The rate of global warming, if it was even detectable at this scale, was about 0.1 degrees Celsius every 1,000 or maybe even every 10,000 years. Well, now it's that 0.1 degrees Celsius every decade. So, Congressman, it's like this in calculus terms. The rate of temperature getting bigger is very high. This would be dt, where capital T is temperature traditionally, lowercase t is time. So, Congressman or Congressman staff, if you're out there, that's the problem. This looks like an exaggerated hockey stick because it is. It's the speed that
the
it's changing.
administrator, Bill, of the EPA said not very long ago, I think within the last weeks, this is 50 to 75 years away. The effects are 50 to 75 years away. We don't have to worry about it right now. What's the misconception there?
It's not 50 or 75 years away. It's 10 or 15, it's 20. So here's the other classic analog, and it doesn't matter if you're a vegan or not, you can understand this. If you have a roast in the oven, and the oven's on, you take the roast out of the oven, the internal temperature continues to go up because the heat makes its way from the outside to the inside. So there's a certain amount of global warming that is, as we say, baked in. There's a certain amount, there's enough carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere already to make the world get warmer for many decades to come. What we want is to slow that rate, and hypothetically, it'd be great to capture some carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But that aside, the three things we want for everybody in the world, now this is no matter what political party you're from, we want this for everyone in the world. We want clean water, access to the internet, access to global information, and then all of our electricity made renewably. And we can do this, you guys. I'm in Washington, D.C., on the same campus that Homeland Security is here in near Ward Circle, which used to be called Wave Circle because there were so many women from the Navy crossing the street over here. And those people, the Waves, who broke the Enigma code, or helped to decode it, and the JN-25, the Japanese code. Those people won the war in 5 years. They had a global conflict, and they resolved it in 5 years. So don't come running to me saying we can't do this, that we have to wring our hands and we're helpless. It's crazy making. Furthermore, my grandfather was in World War I. He rode a horse. He rode a horse into battle, for crying out loud. Nobody does that anymore. My argument being that everything changed in 20, 25 years. We changed everything. We can do this. It's the United States, for crying out loud. Iowa gets 25% of its electricity from the wind. Texas, the oil state, gets 10% of its electricity from the wind. That's competing head to head without any fee on carbon. We shall not use the T word. Oh, no. We shall not say tax. We will not say that word. It's a carbon fee that we're proposing.
We'll do that.
And this would be the free market incentivizing.
Yep.
Thank you all.
That's the thing about carbon exchanges. It's the free market dealing with this. Bill, thanks a million. Always great to see you.
Thanks, you guys. Let's change the world.
Let's do it.
We're
Bill
trying.
Nye, the science guy, host of the Science Rules podcast. It makes it very accessible. I mean, it's
and exciting.
It's not that hard to understand. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.